Good evening. Tonight's story tale, Tom Thumb. Tom Thumb. In the days of the great King Arthur, there lived a mighty magician called Merlin, the most learned and skillful enchanter the world has ever seen. This famous magician, who could take any form he pleased, was once travelling about as a poor beggar, and being very tired, he stopped at the cottage of a peasant to rest himself and asked for food. The farmer bade him welcome, and his wife, who was a good-hearted woman, soon brought him with some milk in a wooden bowl and some coarse brown bread on a platter. Merlin was much pleased with this kindness of the peasant and his wife, but he could not help noticing that, though everything was neat and comfortable in the cottage, they both seemed very unhappy. He therefore asked them why they were so melancholy, and he learned that they were miserable because they had no children. The poor woman said with tears in her eyes, "I should be the happiest creature in the world if I had a son. Even if he was no bigger than my husband's thumb, I would be satisfied." Merlin was so amused at the idea of a boy no bigger than a man's thumb that he determined to grant the poor woman's wish. Accordingly, in a little while, the peasant's wife had a son who, wonderful to relate, was not a bit bigger than his father's thumb. The Queen of the Fairies, wishing to see this little fellow, came in the window whilst his mother was sitting up in bed admiring him. The Queen kissed the child and, giving him the name Tom Thumb, sent for some of the fairies, who dressed her little godson according to her orders. An oak leaf he had for his crown, his shirt of web by spiders spun, with jacket wove of thistles down, his trousers were of feathers down, his stockings of apple rind they tie, with eyelash from his mother's eye, his shoes were made of mouse skin, tanned with the downy hair within. Right. Tom never grew any larger than his father's thumb, which is only of ordinary size. But as he got older, he became very cunning and full of tricks. When he was old enough to play with the boys and had lost all his own marbles, he would creep into the bags of his fellow players and fill his pockets with their marbles. Then, getting out without them noticing, Tom would again join the game. One day, however, he was coming out of a bag of marbles, where he had been stealing as usual. The boy to whom it belonged chanced to see him. "Aha, my little Tommy," said the boy, "so I've caught you stealing my marbles at last, and you shall be rewarded for your thievish tricks." On saying this, he drew the string tight around Tom's neck and gave the bag such a hearty shake that the poor Tom's legs, thighs, and body were sadly bruised. He roared out with pain and begged the fellow to let him out, promising to never steal again. A short time afterwards, Tom's mother was making a batter pudding, and being very anxious to see how it was made, he climbed up to the edge of the bowl. But his foot slipped, and he plumbed head over heels into the bowl without his mother noticing him. She stirred him into the pudding and set him into the pot to boil. The batter filled Tom's mouth and prevented him from crying out. But the hot water began to scald him, and he kicked and struggled so much at the pot that his mother thought the pudding was bewitched, and, pulling it out of the pot, she threw it outside the door. A poor tinker who was passing by picked up the pudding and put it into his knapsack, walked off. As Tom had now got his mouth cleared of the batter, he began to cry aloud, which so frightened the tinker that he flung down the pudding and ran away. The pudding broke into pieces in the fall, and Tom crept out, covered all over with the batter, and walked home. His mother, who was very sorry to see her darling in such a woeful state, put him into a teacup and soon washed off the batter, after which she kissed him and put him into bed. What a day! Soon after the adventure of the pudding, Tom's mother went to milk her cow in the meadow, and she took Tom along with her. The wind was very high, and fearing he would be blown away, she tied him to a thistle with a piece of fine thread. The cow soon observed Tom's little oak leaf hat, and, liking the appearance of it, took poor Tom, his hat and the thistle in one mouthful. While the cow was chewing the thistle, Tom was afraid of her great teeth which threatened to crush him, and he roared out as loud as he could, "Mother! Mother!" "Where are you, Tommy, my dear Tommy?" said his mother. "Here, mother, in the cow's mouth." His mother began to cry and wring her hands, but the cow, surprised at the odd noise in her throat, opened her mouth and let Tom out. Fortunately, his mother caught him in her apron as he was falling, or he might have been dreadfully hurt. I mean, as if being in a cow's mouth is not so bad. Then she put Tom inside her blouse and quickly ran home with him. Tom's father made him a whip of barley straw to drive the cattle with, and having one day gone into the fields, Tom slipped and rolled into the furrow. A raven, which was flying past, picked him up, flew with him over the sea, and there dropped him. A large fish swallowed Tom the moment that he fell into the sea. Soon after, this fish was caught and brought to the table of King Arthur. When they opened the fish in order to cook it, everyone was very astonished at finding such a little boy. Tom was quite delighted at being free again, as you would, coming out of a fish's stomach. They carried him to the king, who made Tom his dwarf, and he soon became a great favourite of the court. By his tricks and his gambles, he not only amused the king and queen, but the knights of the Round Table as well. He often took Tom along if a shower came, and Tom would creep into his Majesty's vest pocket and sleep till the rain was over. King Arthur one day asked Tom about his parents, wishing to know if they were as small as he was and whether they were well off. Tom told the king that his father and mother were as tall as anybody in the court, but that they were in poor circumstances. On hearing this, the king carried Tom to his treasury, where he kept his money, and told him to take as much money as he could carry home to his parents, which made the poor fellow caper with joy. Tom went to procure a purse, which was made out of a water bubble, and King Arthur gave him a large silver piece to put into it. Our little hero had some difficulty lifting the burden upon his back, but at last he succeeded in getting it into place to his liking, and set forward on his journey. Without meeting with any accident, and after resting himself more than 100 times by the wayside, in 2 days and 2 nights he reached his father's house in safety. Tom had travelled 48 hours with a huge silver piece on his back, and was almost tired to death when his mother ran out to meet him, carried him into the house, but soon he returned to King Arthur's court. As Tom's clothes had suffered much in the batter pudding and the inside of the fish, His Majesty ordered him a new suit of clothes and announced he would be mounted as a knight on a mouse. Oh, butterfly's wings his shirt was made, his boots of chicken's hide, and by a nimble fairy blade, well learned in the tailoring trade, his clothing was supplied. A needle dangled by his side, a dapper mouse he used to ride. Thus strutted Tom in a stately pride. There you go. It was certainly very diverting to see Tom in his dress and mounted on the mouse as he rode out hunting with the king and notably, who were ready to expire with laughter at the sight of Tom and his fine prancing charger, a mouse. The king was so charmed with this manner that he ordered a little chair to be made in order that Tom might sit upon the round table, and a palace of gold a foot high with a door an inch wide to live in. He also gave Tom a coach drawn by 6 mice. 6 small mice. Wow. Not large ones, not medium-sized, but small. A coach drawn by 6 small mice. The Queen was so enraged at the honours that were being conferred to Sir Thomas that she resolved to ruin him, and told the King that the little knight had been saucy to her. The King sent for Tom in great haste, but being fully aware of the danger of royal anger, Tom crept into an empty snail shell, where he lay for a long time until he was almost starved with hunger. At last he ventured to peep out, and seeing a fine large butterfly on the ground near his hiding place, he got close to it and jumping astride it, was carried up into the air. The butterfly flew with him from flower to flower, from tree to tree, and from field to field, and at last returned to the court, where the King, and notably, all strove to catch hold of him. Oh, right, hang on, here we go. The butterfly flew with him from flower to flower, and from tree to tree, and from field to field, and at last returned to the court, where the King, and notably where the King and nobility all strove to catch hold of him. But poor Tom finally fell from his seat into a watering pot, in which he was almost drowned. When the Queen saw him, she was angry and said, "He should be beheaded." So Tom was put into a mousetrap to wait for his execution. However, a cat, observing something alive in the trap, patted it about until the wires broke and set Thomas at liberty. The King received Tom into favour once again, but Tom did not live to enjoy it, for a large spider one day attacked him, and although he drew his sword and fought well, the spider's poison at last overcame him. He fell dead on the ground where he stood, and the spider sucked every drop of his blood. King Arthur and his whole court were so sorry at the loss of their little favourite that they went into mourning and raised a fine white marble monument over his grave with the following epitaph: "Here lies Tom Thumb, King Arthur's knight, who died by a spider's cruel bite. He was well known in Arthur's court, where he afforded gallant sport. He rode tilt and tournament, and on a mouse a hunting went. Alive he filled the court with mirth. His death to sorrow soon gave birth. Wipe your eyes, and shake your head, and cry, alas, Tom Thumb is dead." Well, there you go, Tom Thumb. Good evening.